Party Buff.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Party Buff, boosting gamers and streamers. Today, I'd like to introduce you to some of the greatest people that I've had the pleasure of knowing: Azrenix, DStheOriginal, and Oscitater, all of which are fellow streamers. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
So, we are here to talk about video games and streaming and just to help be a support to the community, and also to talk to you mainly about what we do and our opinions on games and such. So we thought it would be a fun way to start off this particular podcast by talking about the kinds of games that we play, and more specifically, what 3 games or series over the course of your lives have influenced you to decide whether or not a game is good or bad. So I guess DS, will start with you. What do you think?
Ooh, so there's 3 different games that kind of stick to mind to me. One is Ark Survival Evolved. I've played that a lot. The reason I really enjoy that game was because I really enjoy the longevity you have in playing that game, where there's not truly an end game. It keeps going a lot. So I think that's really good. Dauntless, that was awesome just because of the great community and the amount of people you can get in there to play with you with the cross-platform. And honestly, I played this pretty much my whole life, was Call of Duty. I think it was just the PvP aspect of that was just a lot of fun.
I think that for me, I never really got into Call of Duty because I never tried it, but for first-person shooters, I was always into kind of the more cartoony, Serious Sam kind of thing myself. Anybody ever play that?
I've not at all.
So I have 10 Serious Sam games on Steam that I got out of a Humble Bundle one time. Never played any of them.
Same, Aussie, same.
But that's such a shame.
I can relate. I played a lot of Duke Nukem and Doom and that sort of stuff when I was a kid. Those were my shooters as a child. You know what I mean? Definitely on the less serious side. But I did get into a period where I played a lot of Call of Duty with some friends, Modern Warfare 2 era back in the day. That was kind of my jam.
Everyone was jam back then. Yeah.
So what do you think, Aussie? What 3 games or series over the course of your life have influenced good or bad?
Oh man, that's a great question. I was trying to figure out between what's influenced my life versus what's influenced my opinion of gaming, and I think those are 2 different things for me. I think my first go-to most of the time is probably Final Fantasy series, which I'm not as huge into it now as I was when I was a kid, but I have distinct memories of playing the NES with my dad as a child, playing Final Fantasy, and he was kind of an artsy dude. So he would literally hand draw maps for every single area in the game of here's where this treasure is in this area, and we would replay through that game, and I just have really fond memories of being a kid and just kind of experiencing that with him. That was one of my foundations of gaming, I think. And there's still things from Final Fantasy to this day that I really enjoy. There's just iconic characters and stuff from that game that I'll see them on stuff, and there's just something about it, and the music and everything too. I've found that all the games that I really, really like, music plays a huge role in them. Anything with really good, memorable music kind of sucks me in. So that's probably my first game. I think my second game, and this is probably going to come as no surprise to anyone, is Monster Hunter. Talk about it all the time because I love Monster Hunter. It's a fantastic game. I've played it since the very original game on the PS2, and I actually hated it the first time I played it. I remember there's actually a game, Champions of Norath. I have it on my shelf next to me, which is why I look over here. For the PS2, I remember being on an old forum for that game back in 2000 or whatever year it was, right? And there was people on there basically being oh, if you like this game, you should really try Monster Hunter. It's a fantastic game. So I looked around in a bunch of stores. I used to hit up pawn shops and stuff all the time as a kid. Finally found it, picked it up, tried it out, and I was this game's fucking terrible. I don't like this at all. Didn't play it. It just sat in my game collection for years. And then I went back one time when I was moving and I didn't have internet. So I was I guess I'll try it out again. And something about it at that point hooked me in. And ever since then, I've been a huge fan of the Monster Hunter series. I think it's a really steep learning curve and not very friendly towards newcomers. But once you kind of get into it, I think it's just a very rewarding game. I remember a particular boss that I was stuck on for a long time. And like the feeling, the memory of beating that, I remember just being like euphoric. Like, I don't know, it's like an adrenaline rush almost. And I don't get that from a lot of games. So I think that game for me holds a very special place, or that series, I should say. And that's also kind of how I got into Dauntless, which for anybody who knows me is a lot of what I stream on Twitch now is Dauntless. So kind of just that genre of games are very special to me. And then for my last slot, I don't know. I was this is like opposite ends of the spectrum here. I was between MapleStory and Dark Souls, which are like two completely opposite games.
Opposite ends of the spectrum. What night and day right there.
Yeah. I think Dark Souls to me is just the games are so well crafted, and they're just, it's almost like a puzzle. Like as you're playing through, you're like completing loops back to areas you've already been to, and everything's just like beautifully interconnected. They have just really well crafted worlds. And again, I think it kind of falls into the realm of similar to Monster Hunter, where they don't really explain a whole lot. You're just kind of like thrown in, and they're like, have fun, try not to get your ass kicked, and you're going to get your ass kicked, like inevitably. But yeah, I think I love that game for that reason. And then MapleStory was like my angsty teenager go-to game. I think I've always been like very introverted and not very social. And I think MapleStory for me as a teenager was like a very good social outlet. It gave me a good opportunity to like communicate with people and meet people and talk to people and kind of like get more comfortable, or like get a lot of stuff off my chest that I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to otherwise. And whole nother story, but for those of you who don't know, I met someone through MapleStory that ultimately resulted in me moving to another country. So as far as influence on my actual life, MapleStory is probably pretty up there. But in the grand scheme of video games, I don't think I don't look at games and I'm like, damn, I wish this was more like MapleStory. So I think those are my 4 games.
No, it's hard to pick just 3. I know. I mean, God, whenever we get to me, it's going to be a tough one because I've been battling with it. I've been going to sleep thinking about which one to pick and which ones to trash and going between 2 like that all the time. But Az, what do you think?
Yeah, so mine's probably going to be a little bit of a long-winded story here, but it all started when I was born at a very young age, and I no, I'm just messing with the
born at an old age.
Yes. So for me, actually, I didn't grow up playing video games. I had a very different childhood, and I didn't get to play games until I was kind of into my teens at that point. So for me, games actually had a different influence. It kind of started with the World of Warcraft, which I'm sure, I mean, half the world is probably familiar with. And for that game, I would say that one actually had a huge influence on me because through my guild when I used to play back in the day, I met somebody who taught me about computers and stuff like that. And that kind of led to my interest in computers, which now leads me into my current job, where I work as IT pretty much. So I would say World of Warcraft definitely had the biggest influence in my life in terms of like how my life is shaped out. But in terms of just like another game in general, I'd say Dragon Age Origins. That was a great RPG game. That was like my first real game, so to speak of. I've never really played like World of Warcraft. Yes, you can classify as a game. It is a game, but I feel like it's more of a different beast of a game than just like a single player type game. And I remember the first time I ever played Dragon Age Origins, it was the most mind-blowing thing in the world to me because at the time I was like, wait, choices you make in a game can actually affect how the story plays out. This is crazy. And this was like back in like 2009, like 2010. So, and that was like, I was like, holy crap. Like I never thought like games were that cool before. And so to me, that's definitely one of the games I felt like was a huge inspiration in terms of just figuring out that games are something more than just raids. Because in World of Warcraft, let's be honest, the only thing you ever do is try to gear up as fast as you can just so you can raid all the the raids at the end of the day, and then do the same thing every week. And just really like, there's a story, but there's really no story there. Like it's just all kind of in the background. Whereas with a game like Dragon Age, your story's in the forefront. You're actually actively the hero of the story. Yada yada yada. So I would say those two definitely. And then the third one is, I guess, the same thing would be The Witcher 3, which is another popular game. But they basically, I've actually finished it earlier last year. It was my first time actually playing Witcher 3, and I've been wanting to play it for years. but life gets in the way, and stuff just happened, and I never got a chance to play it. And then last year I finally got a chance to play it, and it was like the best game I've ever played in my life. And I know that's kind of an understatement. I'm sure no one's ever heard of Witcher 3 before, but it's just such an obscure game. But it's definitely definitely one of the best games I've ever played. It just felt so immersive. The choices, all the voice acting, all the quests that you can do. Definitely one of the games where I'd never wanted to put it down. After like 150, 160 hours, I was like, yeah, this is definitely one of the best games I've ever played in my life. So I would say those three have definitely been the most influential for me.
I think that on my side, and because I was going to that what defines a good or a bad game for me, I was thinking more, and I've struggled with this because of how many games I've played over the course of my life. I've been a gamer since I was a kid, and so I really struggled with this decision. And to pick only 3 is just, I should have picked like, hey guys, what 17 games have influenced you over the course of your life? Something insane. But I'd have to say, I really count on replayability and determining whether or not I can come back to a game again and again despite its bugs and failings. And I think that that's what defines a good game in my mind, and what defines a bad game in my mind is one that, much like if you're at a restaurant and you get really, really, really bad service, but the food was great, you just go, I can't come back here. I can't, because it just kind of taints your taste of the food. And I feel like that way about a game. Sometimes if I get into a game and I'm like, I did not like this at all, or it just went downhill really quickly. So with that being said, I've recently started coming back to, and you've seen me stream it about 1,000 times now, Stardew Valley came back to me as a game that I could play literally for about 24 hours straight. And you can ask Red Rocker 49. We've pretty much done that. It just keep going because it has such replayability. And not just that, I have to appreciate any game or game developer that looks into a game and says, you know what? We need to make an update for this game, and not just make it about, look guys, a new color for your costume, or look guys, a new hat. It's more like, can you add substance to the game, please? And Stardew Valley did that. They've made the game more intricate, and they've added new lands, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. Some games, on the other hand, add so much that it feels gimmicky or overdone. And it's a fine balance between adding just enough and you've either gone too far or we obviously tell you're copping out. And I think that Black Desert Online is a game that I play all of the time. I love Black Desert Online because there's so much you can do. And it has a replayability factor that just is above and beyond. You can do so much in BDO, but I feel like sometimes their updates, they're insisting that people are going way faster than many of us are. And they're like, must add new content all the time. More content, more continents. You want new lands. You want new species. You want new battle methods. Guess what? We got that too. They just keep adding stuff. And it feels like, I feel like they're desperately trying to roll ahead of the game, that they've thrown themselves off of a cliff. And I love the game, so I can keep coming back to it. But on the bad side, I'd have to say, what determines whether or not a game is good or bad? Black Desert Online, there shouldn't be forced PvP. That's my biggest thing too. Is if I want to play a game in a certain way, please don't make me play it in a way I don't want to. It hurts me to have to go into a game and say, I'm stuck in this line, unless it's intentionally a linear game, like, and here's my last one, the Pokemon series. The Pokemon series started off, and I think we're all roughly the same age here. I think Az is the baby of the group.
Yeah.
I think. Ossie's slightly younger than me, and I think DS is just slightly older than me. Maybe.
Maybe.
I think so. Something.
I'm
We're all roughly in our
33,
late 20s or 30s, as far as I can recall. So, somewhere in that decade. But we all remember whenever Pokemon came out in the States, and it was just like, the thing! You had to have it. Everybody gotta catch them all. Like, it was the thing to have. But Pokemon, over the course of its life, has continued to do what I just talked about with BDO. Oh, we added not just new Pokemon, but look at all this new stuff with Mega Stones and this. Yeah, look at that. Look at that from Aussie. He's got an original Pokemon Blue cartridge right in front of our faces.
Dang.
That's classic. And
I've
Pokemon
read.
was great.
Casually on hand, old Pokemon games. It's fine.
It's just
I never did get a chance to catch them all.
Yeah, I mean, I kept playing Pokemon, but I feel like recently, I feel like the repetition got too much even for me, and you're talking to somebody who makes spreadsheets for Black Desert Online. So
Yeah.
that says something. Whenever the repetition gets too intense, even for me.
What you're saying is Pokemon needs more spreadsheet potential.
Yes. How do I judge a game of good or bad? How many spreadsheets can I make about this game?
Yeah.
Yes, what do you think about the games that have... I know that you played a lot of Among Us.
So I really like to focus on a few. Like when I play games, I like to have like one or two I really, really like to play. And really kind of gravitate around those. And I made a big switch because it's funny because yes, we're talking about playability and bugs. And if you come back to it, and like everything in my mind was connecting that to Dauntless in a way.
Heck yeah.
I think we were all thinking it, but we
were
didn't
all
outright say
Definitely
it.
thinking the same thing.
Yep.
I think the only reason, like Dauntless itself, though, like the only reason I stuck to that so long is the people that was there.
Yeah.
I think that was a huge thing.
Yep.
Game wise,
here,
though,
yeah.
I've been slowly finding myself trying to find a new game for myself that I really, really enjoy. I like a lot of the games, but like to find that one where like, okay, I can play this for the next 6 to 7, 8 months or something like that, and get into that community as well, rather than playing it for a few weeks and then switching off to another game. So I think that's what I'm struggling with right now, is trying to find that new game I want to main, really.
So you've heard it here first, podcasters. If you have game suggestions for DS, please hit us up on our streams. Twitch.tv/DStheOriginal. Go and harass him with game suggestions.
Yes. So that's what I've been kind of dabbling with a bunch of different games right now, figuring what I like. So
I was literally just talking to somebody. I think pretty much all of you know him, but Razzie. I was talking to him a day or two ago, and I was like, I want games to be fun again.
Yeah.
Like, it's been so long since I feel like I've played just a really good game that sucks me in for a long period of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what I'm trying to find.
Definitely.
I feel like that's what happened with television too. A lot of people who watch TV felt like there's nothing good on TV, which has been kind of the mantra of television since the past like 30 years or so. Everybody says there's nothing good on. I've got 579 channels and I can't find anything good to watch. I think that it just depends on what you define as fun, and that's why I wanted to ask on what really influenced you. And I know that Aussie, you talked about MapleStory. And I don't know if we want to count Dauntless as an MMO, because technically it is online, but it's not really an RPG in my opinion.
It's an MMO light. It's an MMO light.
Yeah, MMO light, diet MMO. But I think the very first MMO I ever played was a game called Tibia. It's this little 16-bit, adorable mini game. It's like a whole world. It's a whole adventure world. I found my best friend and I met on Tibia, and he moved across the country. So you were talking about moving countries, yeah. He moved across the country to come and live with me, and it was just a lot of fun. You meet some of the greatest people in the community, and fun fact for everybody listening, I don't play Dauntless as much anymore, but all three of these guys have played Dauntless and continue to play Dauntless, and if it wasn't for the Dauntless community, I wouldn't be a streamer. So there is something to be said, even though Dauntless is buggy as all get out, as y'all have mentioned, and has like 1,000 different problems with it. And I do feel like the most recent update was just their way of saying, keep playing. If we reset you, you have to keep playing. And I just think it was kind of the evil, manipulative, cheap way out of marketing. But
grind 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Pretty much.
I've watched y'all play it, and it feels like, wait a minute, you're telling me they reset all of that work you did and you have to do it all over again? Why didn't they just do something different or add new monsters? No, we're just going to reset you pretty much. And I feel like for all the bugs, it keeps getting played because the community is so solid. And I appreciate that about the game, because the community that y'all have influenced me greatly. And Tibia was the game once upon a time back when I was a wee little tiny thing. The year 2002. Take it back to the day, my friends. I was much younger.
I should have.
It was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. But MapleStory was an old game. What's one of the MMOs y'all played too?
People to this day that I met in MapleStory that I'm still in touch with. You know what I mean? From like 15 years ago, or 15 plus years ago. I guess at this point I'm getting fucking old. But I mean, like I have a handful of friends from way back then when I was, 13, 14, 15 years old that I'm still in touch with. I mean, there's a guy who lives pretty close to me right now. Like I moved to this area, and like me and Shelby have like hung out with him and his fiance. Like we've gone, you know, to dinner with him and everything. Or like I have a buddy who's still, he actually streams as well. And I was just catching up with him the other day, and it's, you know, it's been like years, but we still just like go back. We're like talking about shit from 10 years ago. So yeah, there's definitely, I don't know. I've had a lot of longtime friends that I've met through gaming for sure.
Oh,
DS, did you ever play an MMO?
No, not really. I've never really been into like MMOs really that big. So I'm kind of breaking into some of that stuff now, playing some games, but at the same time, like that was really never a big thing for me before. Which is like a whole like genre of games kind of like not discovered, it feels like.
It's definitely not for everybody, I feel like. I know a lot of people who are just like, yeah, it's just too much, or like it's too tedious kind of thing, you know?
I definitely say my favorite MMO, or different favorite genre of games is definitely MMOs. I've played World of Warcraft, RuneScape, Guild Wars 2. You know, just played it.
I think MapleStory was like my poor man's WoW.
I feel like it was for a lot of people. Or maybe RuneScape. I would say RuneScape is a more of a viable alternative to MapleStory.
I know that whenever it came, did y'all ever play Tibia or hear of Tibia back in the day? Started around 1996.
I never played it.
It's a very old game, and because it was like these little 16-bit characters, it was just a very basic game. It was once defined as in what was called the TibiaNews.net, and that website has long since died and been buried, but I'll never forget this line from it. They said, Tibia is a chat room with something else to do, and there was not a better definition of that game that I could find anywhere. On their wiki, anywhere. No, it is a chat room with you killing dragons in the meantime. And that's what it felt like, and that's what you were doing in this game. But I think at this point we could kind of switch gears and go into what we were talking about before about games just kind of changing a little bit as they grow, because MapleStory's changed a lot since the beginning. I mean, the graphics are still the same.
It's hot garbage these days.
Is it garbage? I haven't seen it in a while. I started back up probably about 5 years ago, and I haven't touched it.
Yeah, I could also be like a curmudgeon-y old man, but
that definitely sounds more like it.
Stopped playing for years. At one point, I was like, let's go back and check it out. And what used to take like 6 months to level a character was like a 2-day process, and everything was just like, you didn't get like the satisfaction of like exploring stuff and actually struggling. Like everything was just handed to you, and I was just
nowadays I feel like most games. I feel like most games just say, you know, as long as you pay money, you can skip past almost any, you know, gated part, and it's all about money these days. Huh? I think that's why games have become a lot less fun, is because now you've got like battle passes that you got to complete, like, log in every day. Yeah, microtransactions. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember back on the wheel, you know, the days of how when Skyrim did their horse armor, everyone laughed at him for it, and now like I feel that's even like there's even more egregious examples now instead of just horse armor. So you know, people
laugh at the horse armor DLC in Skyrim and then proceed to buy Skyrim on 6 different systems in a row.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have Skyrim on my toaster.
I'm curious from a guy who isn't so. You admitted he isn't so much of a gamer, and I'm curious to hear it from your perspective as well. What game do you feel has outgrown its britches in regards to it trying so hard to be something it's not that you've played?
Oh, I'm trying to think. And another reason I just want to touch on this real quick too, because I think you guys were talking about the MMOs and stuff too as well. I don't know if this really made a big contribution to it, as I was a console gamer up until about a year ago. I never had a computer up until last year at this time. Oh, so that might have been a big effect of why I never really been in MMOs a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like most MMOs were never on consoles. You'd have kind of like watered down alternatives to some things, but yeah, it was never.
Yeah. But yeah, I was always on PlayStation or Xbox until last year. But I don't know. I'm trying. I hate to change it a little bit, but like I know you all play it. You know, I'm gonna probably say it's Dauntless. It's kind of like when they started adding. You can skip for platinum for since the new update. Stuff like that. I mean, it's not quite like it's not a pay to win still, which I have to give them that aspect is good. But it just seems like there's little things. They had the little mini battle passes. I don't remember what it was, but it was like 2,000 platinum or like 2,400 platinum.
Yeah,
Yeah, there was a
And
little
they had-
Christmas one that had like 2 cosmetics in it, and it was like $25.
You're like,
Yeah,
nope.
Like, yeah, I'm good.
I think it's getting to the point where it's either going to get a lot worse or hopefully stay where it's at. I don't know. I guess it'll be interesting to see with that, because I think the microtransactions might just keep on like coming up more and more and more to the point where it's just like every other game. Hopefully it's not, but I don't know. That's the only game I've really seen a lot of stuff like that really happen, because I haven't played any other games with many microtransactions in it.
Yeah, I feel like battle passes are definitely becoming the norm. Like, and companies have seen like the money that you can make hand over fist, so they're definitely gonna start implementing stuff like that. The one thing I will say is that Dauntless's battle pass is one of the most fairest and the best one that I've seen out of all of them. Like, you know, compared to like other games, you have to literally log in every day, or you're not completing it. You know what I mean? Whereas in Dauntless, it's like you can complete the entire battle pass within like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So I'll give them a lot of credit for making the battle pass at least something that you can complete and then some. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm sure you guys are the same, but I'm like on level probably 100, 200 something of the battle pass, which is like, you know, twice over. So it's kind of like Dauntless is definitely one of the more fairest one, but I feel like that's where the problem is too, because they got to find other ways to make money. And I feel like now that I think they got bought out recently too last year. And I think that might have something to do with the fact that the new parent company wants more money, and who doesn't? So,
If a
that's
game
definitely
is
good.
free, then microtransactions are going to be part of the game, and you can expect it to be pay to win, at least in some aspect. I feel like if you pay for a game, that if you pay, and let's talk about back in the day, who remembers games actually costing money and significant amounts of money and not having other transactions within it? I mean, come on. We all remember paying $60 for a brand new game. We begged our parents to save up and to please get us this for Christmas. And then you got into the game, and guess what? Every aspect of the game was in there. Every single one. If it was part of the game development, it was in the game. And you only paid that $60 flat to get every part of the game. But if you're
And if
paying...
there was bugs, there was bugs.
Yeah, and if there were bugs, there were bugs. Tough, deal with it. And it was like, if you're paying $2 to $3 for a game, or if a game is free, it's going to be littered with microtransactions. I feel like there should be a balance. I feel like if you're going to pay over $40 for a game, the only microtransactions should be cosmetic, not pay to win. That's how I feel about it. I think that if you are paying to win after paying $40, I have heard horror stories about people who have spent not only tens of thousands, but literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on microtransactions in a video game. And it is just boggling. I cannot understand why the game let people get away with that, and they still think themselves to be good game developers. That is exploitation. Yes, everybody's trying to make money, but if one person is spending $125,000 on microtransactions, you probably need to call a professional to go check on them.
So much.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always been of the mindset, like, I've never been adamantly against microtransactions as long as they aren't something that gives people like an upper hand in a game, right?
Yep.
Like, I don't mind cosmetic transactions, or like, you know, microtransactions. And for free games, I've had several free games where I've put money into them. I usually, you know, dictate, like you said, you know, back in the day, you would save up, spend $60, get a game. I look at it as if like, okay, I've played this free game for 200 hours. At that point, like, I'm okay with putting some money into it, kind of like supporting the developers, right?
That's what it's about, is supporting the developers, though. It's not about like dropping tens of $1,000s into making yourself the most powerful wizard in the game.
Yeah, and I mean, like, those transactions, I think I'm kind of okay with. Like, for example, Warframe was actually a game that I played a lot of back in the day, and it ended up having like a lot of microtransactions, and I probably spent more money on that game than I would have liked to, looking back at it. But at the time, it was like, okay, if I were playing other games during this time, I would end up buying 10 new games for $60 a piece, but this has kept my attention span long enough that why don't I put that money towards them to support them so that they can keep making new content, right? That's kind of how I like justify some of those things in my brains. The old brain box. But Yeah, I will say there's certain games, like I know Genshin Impact, for example, is kind of a recent one that sort of blew up, and a lot of people sort of jumped over and started playing that. And I have people all the time be like, "Oh, why don't you play this? Why don't you play this?" And like, first of all, it's not something that I'm super interested in. Like I've talked about this on my stream a lot. I'm not like a huge anime type guy, so like just the aesthetic of it and everything doesn't really appeal to me.
I
But
can't
on
believe you
top of
said
that, I know for a fact, like there's the option to pay to like boost your characters, right? And people are like, "Oh yeah, but you don't have to. You can just grind that out." And I'm like, "Yeah,
that.
but if I could spend the next 80 hours grinding this out, or just drop like $5 and be done with it, I know for a fact I would end up doing that. So I'm just gonna not play the game. Like I'm just gonna fucking nip that right in the bud before it even gets started and just be done with it."
I think with Genshin,
Yeah.
it's so easy to get it taken away because there's so many characters in Genshin. So you're right. It's like, okay, I could spend 80 hours to grind up this one character. I could spend $5 on this one character, but we get a team of 4. And then before you know it, you have to switch them out for different dungeons. And then you're trying to grind all those guys up for 80 hours a piece. And and now you've gotten up about $200 in the hole because you wanted to upgrade all of your people instantly. I feel like it's a slippery slope. I watch people play Genshin. I tried it myself. I couldn't get into it. People know on my stream why, and I just couldn't get into Genshin. I wanted to. People said I was going to love it if I loved Breath of the Wild, and I did. I loved Breath of the Wild. But if people are looking for a Breath of the Wild light or Breath of the Wild remake, Immortals Phoenix Rising, I feel like is your better choice here. Genshin, I couldn't get into. A lot of people really enjoy it. So if you can enjoy it, kudos, more power to ya. That's how I feel about it.
Speaking on that subject, I feel like just like kind of like a little tangent here, but I feel like most games nowadays want to become like gas, games as a service where they just continuously can be updated, can continuously be, people can keep paying for stuff that they like. There's no such thing as, well, there is, there's certain games like Cyberpunk, that still come out and it's a complete package for the most part. But there's a lot of games nowadays where they just come out and they want you to keep playing that game and that game only for like the foreseeable future, for however long that game exists. Everybody basically wants to copy the Destiny model, where you just continuously get new content, you continuously have to keep grinding for new stuff, and that's how people like. Think of a game like Cyberpunk. Well, Cyberpunk is a rare exception because everybody and their mom was basically hyped up for that. But at the same time, it's like, but any other game, like if it's just a single player game, people are just going to pay for it once and then leave, right? And that's basically it. And then you basically get like a trickle of money down a couple of years, like as people keep buying it. But like with the games as a service model, people will continuously keep giving you money every month for the new battle pass, And so when the publisher decides to like, hey, should I make my game as like an online game or should I make it as a single player game? I feel like that's what happens when you get games like Genshin that, it kind of made like that, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like every game wants to copy that model of just having you continuously play and keep paying money as well. So that basically they never run out of a revenue source.
That's very true. It's the smarter marketing method. I know that their marketing department's probably wringing their greedy little hands going, how can we keep people involved in this for the least amount of work? And I feel like that's true. I think that Dauntless has pulled that off, and we are coming to the end of our time here. So I'd like to wrap it up by first asking DS. I know you said you play Call of Duty, and you said you play Dauntless, and there's a variety of games you play. Without making the game go over a cliff in regards to boosts or something like that, tell me what you would like to see added to the game of your choice and how they could make it better in your opinion.
Ooh, this is a big question. Wow, I'm trying to think.
We'll give you a minute if somebody else has
give
already
me a
got
minute.
the answer.
Go to Aussie. I'll come back to this.
Go to Aussie.
if you want.
I was just thinking, I'm like, man, I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, from a streaming standpoint right now, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of us have streamed Dauntless, and the community there is great. So I think if there were some kinks to be ironed out in that game that would kind of improve the health of the game to make it a little bit better from the playing standpoint, to really sort of feed that healthy community that's there, I think that would be really beneficial. With that said, that's me saying that because I've streamed so much of it, and like I'd like to keep that party bus rolling. You know what I mean? From like an actual personal selfish standpoint, I have no idea. It's weird. I feel like there hasn't been a game in a long time that I've really connected with like I would when I was young. You know, it's there's so much coming out these days that like when I'm done with a game, it's just like, okay, you know, into this month this game's coming out, next month this game's coming out. Like you keep jumping to the next thing, as opposed to like back in the day I would have games, even just like simple games, you know, like you were saying, you buy it and you get the complete package. I would just replay through the same game like 10 times over the course of 2 years because I liked that game. I couldn't tell you the last time I like actually replayed something fully. So I'm not too sure. Yeah, I feel like maybe I'm just too impartial to everything, but I feel like there's no games that I care about enough right now to be like, wow, I really wish this game got improved.
What do you think, Az?
Well, I mean,
Like, it's
probably
cop-out.
bad. I know Dauntless is like they have a skeleton crew of developers working on it. It's only like, I mean, they're a small team, so I feel like the least they can do is like what Austin and DS said, kind of like are just, you know, kind of fix the bugs that they have, and then maybe add a bit more behemoths, just in regards to Dauntless. You know what I mean? I feel like they have a shortage of behemoths and or like monsters, and if they could add a bit more, and if they could fix out some of the bugs, I think that basically improves the game already by like 50%. So would add a bit more content for, you know, for streamers as well as the community. And I will say the Dauntless community, I know we kind of touched upon it already, but out of all the multiplayer games that I've played in my short life, I feel like the Dauntless community has definitely been one of the most friendliest. And honestly, can't thank them enough for that. Just, you make a lot of good friends here, and it's definitely a good place to come out and have fun. So that's, I mean, pretty much they got the community down. They just need to get the game a little bit better, and you can go from there.
Like it. DS, did you give it some thought?
So yeah, I know I was going to touch on this because Aussie said iron out the kinks in Dauntless. I think a better term of phrasing is like putting speed bumps on the highway. Like that's how some of this stuff is. Like it hits pretty hard. So it's a great community, though. I will say that if they put more effort into the bugs, I honestly would like to see more crossplay in some of the bigger games. I think Monster Hunter World have had crossplay compatibility on stuff. I think that it's already a great game, but I think that would just take off.
Yeah.
I think I would definitely give it more of a chance if it went crossplay.
I think like cross-play, cross-save in this day and age
Yeah.
should be a norm, right?
It's
Feels
getting to
weird.
that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has to be almost.
I think that's
Like
probably
game
one
in
of the best
2021.
points, is that crossplay should. Why? You're right, Aussie. Why in this day and age is crossplay not a thing? And DS, thank you for bringing it up, because I feel like that's a really important place to end on. Is that, you know, a lot of games are starting to cross-platform. Terra has cross-platformed its consoles, but not into the PC. And I'm sorry, why? I get it. You want to cross-platform the consoles, and we're very grateful. But why did the PC get left out? Is it because you sold them to a different developer and you couldn't all just kind of be friendly with each other? What happened there? And I know that we're talking about the bugs on Dauntless. I have not played Dauntless since even a little bit before the Reforge, and so I can't really speak to the bugs that y'all are experiencing with it. I can only speak to the games that I'm familiar with, and since we're finishing up on bugs, and please clean this up, Terra. I love you, Terra. I love you so much. I love your characters. I love your story. I love everything about you, except the bugs. And that's the proof of a good game right there. And that brings us back full circle, is what's the difference between a good game and a bad game, and what defines the good versus the bad. That brings me right back to it. Terra, I keep playing you despite the fact that I crash every time I go into Velica. Despite the fact that I glitch through some walls. Despite the fact that I fall through trees and get stuck and have to restart the game. Despite the fact that a lot of the text is still in Korean, and it shouldn't be for certain NPCs for those of us who don't speak Korean. I forgive you, Terra, but I want to see it get better, so please quit with the gimmicks and get with the program. You just sold it to a new developer. Can you please get your head out of the clouds and come back down to reality for those of us who want to keep playing the game because the substance was so great, but you decided, okay, the substance is fine, let's just put some glitter on it. No, doesn't work like that, all right? I want to see things get better in that community. Because like in any MMO, you're going to have people typing things that are less than savory in the chat, and I get it. Okay, it happens. All right, we've got 9-year-olds who think that they're big old badasses, and they're not. But I don't really care about that so much in the community. I've not seen that in Dauntless as much as I have in games that are actual MMOs like Terra and BDO, where you've got people thinking that they're the bee's knees and they go around saying things that are inappropriate. But like we're talking about cross-platforming, yeah, there's a good point being brought up right over there. Okay? You should not be limited to a certain amount of cross-platforming. Technology has advanced. It's time that we stopped with the gimmicks and upped with the substance.
Yep,
That's
no,
my
I agree.
opinion.
I agree.
Definitely.
So I think
not
that
only technology has advanced, standards should have advanced by now. You know?
yes,
Yeah.
Not to go back to Dauntless, but like literally a free-to-play, pretty much indie game, right? Like from a small studio, has cross-platform, cross-save across every system. Like, why is this an issue for large AAA developers? And I know part of it's the actual, so like hardware manufacturers like Sony and Nintendo and all that. But I feel like if
spoiled by
smaller
Dauntless.
companies can make it happen, get on that shit, you know?
This little indie
no, I
studio
agree.
can make a cross-platform across consoles and across the PC. Why can't the bigger games do it? You bring up a good point. So I think that's a good place to call it here. So I do want to say thank you to everybody here on Party Buff. DStheOriginal, all of us are streamers, by the way. So if you're looking for it, then it will be in the credits. You can look for our links right there. And if you're on the YouTube video, I'll have everybody's links set up in the credits. They're all fantastic streamers. I definitely encourage you to go and check out and support, because the games that we play, whether or not you're an extreme gamer or if you're a casual gamer, you'll enjoy us. We're really into the streaming community and very much support. So thank you so much for coming and being a part of Party Buff. And we're here to support you and boost you, our fellow gamers and our fellow streamers. Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Party Buff.